Hello and welcome to Biker Bushcraft. In my last video, I was packing for a 2-night, 3-day trip. I said I might go to the desert. I'm sort of in the desert. I'm in the high desert. I'm at about 7,500 feet and have things pretty well set up. Have my fire ring and a little bit of wood. The only thing really out here is some manzanita. There's a few small pines, but the manzanita will work fine. There's lots of dead stuff around here I can use for fire. That'll burn hot. In my tarp structure, my sleeping setup, I added one item. And the reason I did this is it's supposed to get cold tonight. It's supposed to be in the low 30s. And so I have a sheepskin that I bring, and I use that as a sleeping pad. So time to work on getting a fire started and start getting my food out and ready to cook. Okay, we've got our fire going here. Pretty good bed of coals started up. I've got one of these rocks that's a flat rock. I'm going to use that as a work surface. I've got my candle lantern going and it's hung up. Looks like the steak is thawed enough. Still got a little bit frozen in the middle, but I think if I cook it pretty low temperature, it'll be fine. I got a pretty late start today and didn't get out until 2 o'clock, so I got here late. It's pretty late. I wanted to do something different with the potatoes. I was going to try and do some scallop potatoes in a frying pan, but I just don't have the energy to do that. So what I'm going to do is take a couple more small rocks and create a space for my potato, and I'm going to go ahead and bake my potato in there while I'm cooking the steak. I've got my coals down, my steak's on, it's coming along. My potato's sitting here on a stone right next to it, and it's coming along slowly. Actually, it's coming along pretty good. And I've got my beans out here on the flat rock, ready to break some beans. And let's see what we got here. Oh, these look good. Pretty fresh. Okay, steak came out really good. Can't even pick it up with a knife. My beans are just about at a boil, and my potato is pretty close. It's tender. Still got to cook just a little bit in the outside, but I think I'm gonna dig into this steak, wait for the beans to finish, and finish up with that potato. Should be a really good meal. Looking forward to it. Okay, all done. Chowed down on half that steak, so I had room for my potatoes. Potatoes done pretty well. The beans. Crunchy, but not stringy. I was really hungry, and I already went through half this steak. It's rare. It's really good. So I'd call that a success. Now dinner's done, and it's time for dessert. Like I mentioned, I brought some apples. I'm going to roast some apples. had a hard time finding a clean stick. Manzanita is not the best to use, and there's only one pine tree around here, and it's not ideal either. There's nothing else, but I found a stick that worked out, and I cleaned it up, whittled a point onto it, and stuck it through my apple. Now I need to remember to hang on to that stick for tomorrow night, not use it for kindling in the morning. Got a little bit more of a fire than I'd like to have going here, but when it took off, it really took off. I really don't have much wood in here, but it'll be down to coals shortly. So what I'm trying to do is just rotate this and bake it over the fire until it's good and hot and the skin is ready to fall off. And I can rest it over here. That'd be a lot smarter. You can see the skin starting to bubble. That's what I want. I'm sure there are other ways to do this, but this is how I did it when I was a kid, and that's the way I know. Feel free to put something down in the comments section, though, if you've got a better way to roast apples. You know, it's interesting. There's surprisingly few recipes online for roasting apples over a campfire that don't use tinfoil. And I prefer not to carry foil with me, so I'm looking for ways to do it on the stick. And this is the only way I know how to do it on a stick. It's whistling and sizzling, and see little bubbles in the skin. That's a good sign. You know, I like being out here by myself, just spending time in the quiet, getting away from it. You might have noticed in the food and trip preparation video that I did that there was noise in the background. There were cars and motorcycles and dogs and airplanes and just about everything. And I live out in the boonies. You become, when you're filming, you become hyper aware of the noise because you're trying to get your background controlled. You're trying to really control the environment when you're filming. And it's not like being in a studio where everything is truly controlled. So out here, it's quiet, and now being even more aware of all the noise around where I live, I enjoy that. But that said, it's always so much fun to sit around a campfire and share stories with people. And I've had numerous occasions where I've been out on the road and run across somebody, and whether they're campsites by mine or whether we're both headed into the campsite or whether we're just on the road and decide to stop for one night and hang out. And I've heard some of the greatest stories. I've heard some Native American lore that at the moment the best stories escape me, but they still, to this day, years and years later, mean so much to me. And people's personal stories are just fascinating. And that's one of the great things about motorcycle camping is you're out there on the road, you run into people and you share stories, you share your stories with them, they share their stories with you, and you can build some pretty amazing friendships that way, just with people you meet on the road. Fire's beginning to burn down a little bit. Getting to be coals, which I prefer. Cooling off enough I can get close enough to do this. Remote camping like this, you probably wonder, what do you do in between cooking and sleeping? Or in between cooking, I should say, because clearly you wake up and you cook, then you do other stuff, then you cook, then you sleep. Well, I explore. I do like to keep my camp in sight, and that's one of the downsides to motorcycle camping is obviously you want to keep your motorcycle in sight. It's more of an attraction to those who might steal from you than, say, a car. But that doesn't mean I can't hike around and explore. I also can pretty quickly tear down my camp and relocate and just kind of go on to the next place and go see something else. This particular campsite is right off the side of the road. I was just riding along, but like I said, I did plan it. I had planned, so I should tell this story too. I had planned to go to another location, a developed campsite, and I looked at the weather report and it all looked good. Looked like it was going to be warm in the closest neighboring town, warm enough. I wasn't expecting 60s, but it was going to be in the high 30s, low 40s, and I'm okay with that. And so I had this all planned out, and then I checked the weather report again, and I found a weather report for the exact location where the campsite was. And the temperatures were actually going to be in the single digits. Now that's just a little bit too cold to camp unless you're preparing for it, but I really didn't want to do that. That's not comfortable, that's not fun. That's not something that you're typically going to do just for the fun of going camping, is go camp in 9-degree weather. So I changed my mind. I looked for a different site, and I found some possibilities. But I had also planned on making a stop on the way to that other campsite. So I decided to just make that stop my destination. And that stop is just a place on BLM land. It's, like I said, I had hoped there was water. There's no water. And I didn't bring any in, but I'm not that far from town, so if I run out tomorrow, I can always run into town and get some more. But it's a nice little spot. I just pulled off the road, and I actually found a fire pit along the side of the road, and that's why I picked this exact spot. A pile of rocks, just waiting to be my campsite. I'm about 20 feet off the road, maybe, but that's plenty. And nobody's going to be down this road. I haven't seen another person on this road today. I'm it. So I'm pretty satisfied that this is going to work out for the next 2 days. And like I said, if tomorrow, sometime during the day, I decide that this isn't where I want to be, just pack up and leave. It's no big deal, and go someplace else. And that's the other thing with packing up. I sidetracked myself with my story. Is that's good and cooked. Maybe even a little too cooked, but that's good and cooked. So, so here we go to sidetrack again. Once you heat it up to where the skin is ready to fall off, you peel the skin off the apple. So anyway, what I was saying about packing up and going is I can easily just pack everything up, throw it on the bike, and take off and go explore and ride around, see some of the local sites, and do that for the day and come back and set it back up. It's no big deal to set the tent back up. The other option I have is, of course, to just keep going and find a new place to go. And there's a third option, and that is I can take my tarp and collapse it over everything. Obviously, I don't leave anything of value, but, you know, over my bedroll, and unhook it from the bike and just go. And then when I come back in the evening, it just takes me a couple of minutes to hook the tarp back up to the bike, start my fire, and off I go and have a nice dinner and continue to use that as my home base. So there are options. There are plenty of things to do during the day when you're doing a multi-day camp. And so you're not just tied to a location and you're not just sitting there bored. Now, on the other hand, after you realize how nice it is to get away from the noise of the city, sitting down in the absolute middle of nowhere with a book and just reading in nothing but silence with nature around you. People pay good money for therapists to make them feel that good. Just my opinion. All right, now, the piece de resistance. Remember that cinnamon and brown sugar mix I mentioned? So I'm going to take my nice skinned, super hot roasted apple. I'm just going to dip that sucker in the bag and coat it. Get as much of the stuff to stick to it as I can. And then, back in the fire she goes, in the coals. And I'm going to continue roasting until all that sugar and cinnamon caramelizes to the apple. I don't want to get too carried away, but just get it to melt. It's melting nicely. I can see it. Incidentally, when you're camping bushcraft and you're really serious about your fire because you're surviving with it, you cook with it, it's a tool. Fire is a tool. And this is what you want. You want coals. You want this low, small fire that serves this purpose. You cook with it, you heat with it, but you don't get carried away. You don't need a raging bonfire. There's no need for it. And there's a lot of reasons not to do it. First of all, it's dangerous, especially in a really dry area like I'm in. You don't want to do something that's going to potentially cause a fire. So that's something to avoid. The other reason is, especially motorcycle camping, I've mentioned before, you try to be a little bit stealthy. And a roaring fire is going to draw attention. A nice small fire with some coals, not so much. Who's going to see this? If anybody does see it, you know, if spotter planes flying over Fanier and they're specifically looking for that, okay, and I'm legal, so it's no big deal. But what I don't want is people that live in the area that may object to people camping near their property, seeing it and getting irritated. I just don't want to draw the extra attention and have the potential extra hassle of people knowing I'm there, and not only knowing I'm there, but being concerned that I'm there. I mean, face it, if somebody's camping next to your land and they've got a roaring fire, you're probably going to be concerned about them spreading that fire and potentially damaging your property. And that's a perfectly legitimate concern. So you might say I'm a professional camper. I'm a bushcrafter. I'm out here and I'm using fire as a tool. I'm using it safely, and I'm making sure that I'm not doing anything that would damage the environment, damage the area, or bother the people around the area. And I think it feels pretty good. Boy, that tastes good. So I'm going to have to let it cool off just a little bit here before I can eat it. I really don't want to bite into this thing, and you can watch my eyes bug out bright red from burning myself. But anyway, that's my dessert. It's a roasted brown sugar and cinnamon apple, and it is, I don't know that it's good for me, probably far from good for me, but it's good. So there we go. I'll let that cool down for a minute, and I'm going to shut off the camera for the night. I do appreciate you watching this video. I'm going to separate my videos into each separate day of this trip. So this will be the end of part 2, because of course part 1 was my trip preparation. So I want to thank all of you for watching my videos, and everybody who's shared them, everybody who's liked them, everybody who's commented. Thank you. It means a lot to me that you watch, and it means a lot to me that you comment. Your comments help me get better, and that's what I want, because I want to give you what you want. So please keep commenting, keep telling me what you like, and I'll keep doing these videos. Thanks again, and we'll see you on tomorrow's video.